welcome each one of you to this session on hybrid model for higher education, new normal. In time like this, we need to stay connected and stay positive. This session is being organized under the aegis of Industry 4.0 Expert Committee of BCIC. We'd like to specially thank Mr. A.N. Chandramouli, past President and Chairman of the Industry 4.0 Expert Committee of BCIC, for curating this session for the benefit of our members at this crucial period. The speaker for today's session is Dr. K.N. Subramania, Chairman, Industry Institute Interface 3I, Expert Committee of the BCIC, and Principal of the RV College of Engineering, Bangalore. He requires no introduction. The session will be moderated by Mr. A.N. Chandramouli. On behalf of the BCIC, we express our sincere thanks to Dr. K.N. Subramania for accepting our invitation to address on this important subject. We also like to thank all the participants for joining for today's session. We request all of you to kindly mute your mic and webcam options. This is to enhance and keep the bandwidth strong, as well as avoid any disturbance in the background. Please post your questions in the chat box only. Also, be viewing the chat box for any specific instruction given by the organizer from time to time. The speaker will respond to the questions during the session, and in case time do not permit, we shall be sharing the queries to the speaker and shall revert back to you accordingly. Kindly note, the organizers will be disconnecting those participants who switch on their mic or webcam despite of our frequent request. May I now invite Mr. A. Chandramouli to inaugurate and set the context for today's subject and also moderate the session. Thanking you once again to all. Now over to you, Chandramouli sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Prithvi. I noticed that there is a lot of bandwidth noise on the background. I also noticed many have still got the video camera on. It is occupying one Mr. Kalyan. Mr. Kalyan has to switch off. There are many audios are still on, so I hope you are able to listen to the excellent presentation coming up from Professor Subramania ji. Good morning, Dr. Subramania ji.
Good morning, sir. Good morning.
Thank you so much for helping us to organize this webinar, being the primary speaker. I'll just set the context of today's talk. It's a very important and very contemporary and very important subject. Mr. Kalyan's video is once again on. I think it's a little disturbing us. Okay, I will proceed with my introduction. I gathered some very interesting information through my uncle called Google. And according to the World Economic Forum, around 1.2 billion children are out of classrooms, with the schools, which schools, you know, in the Western parlance, school could be even a school of management, you know, shut down globally due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So that is precisely one of the important context why we are here today, the COVID-19. Electronic learning management systems such as Google Classroom are helping classes to connect distantly and communicate efficiently and stay organized. Like today's webinar is one such example. The large-scale national and international efforts to leverage technology to the market players in support of distance education, remote and online learning during the COVID pandemic are emerging and evolving rapidly. In the last 3 months, I think it has gone up by 40%. I'm told in many of the average of 40%. Believe me, in manufacturing industry, the use of online has gone up by 60% in the last 3 months. The very important thing, the increasing demand of various end user sectors, particularly the healthcare sector, to train their employees. Healthcare sector has to also train their employees, in a short time, in propelling the industry demand. The corona pandemic has further driven the industry demand for e-learning solution among students and corporates. So our BCIC has put together Industry Institute Interface Committee. None other than Dr. K.N. Subramania is a chairman of this committee. And I head the Industry 4.0 committee. So it's a good confluence or convergence of these two committees to consider this Education 4.0 as well as the Industry 4.0. So both students and corporates have equal benefit from this concept. Europe is expected to generate, particularly Europe is expected to generate a huge demand for e-learning solution in the near future, because Italy, Spain, France, Switzerland, Sweden, all the developed nations have been seriously affected. United Kingdom particularly, they are the worst hit markets as well as worst hit systems of education and training due to corona pandemic. The government organization across these countries are encouraging the use of advanced digital learning techniques. First, government is still working. It's ironic, but it's very heartening to know in all the nations, government is at last working, and we are happy about it. And not being sarcastic, but it's a very serious point. All government institutions are working beautifully, and their organizations across the world have been encouraging the use of advanced digital learning techniques to maintain social distancing and to curb the spread of the virus. Having said that, that's so much about the COVID background, but there is another background. The global e-learning market, a survey was done in 2019, well before the corona hit us. It surpassed US $200 billion. Even in 2019, it was more than 200 billion online learning market. And a study has been put together, and they anticipate at least 8% cumulative average growth rate, compounded average growth rate. I am sure now they will say if they redo the survey, it won't be 8%, it will be at least 20%. And between 2020 and 26, it is supposed to reach $375 billion as per the old survey, 2019 survey. If they do it now, it will be at least $600 billion, of which higher education is going to be one very important part of today's session. The advent of several new technologies such as cloud computing and artificial intelligence and augmented reality and simulated training, all coupled with increasing internet penetration, mobile phone and internet. In India, I am told 40% of the population have got a smartphone already. And there is nobody in the world today is waiting to buy a smartphone. Everybody is buying a smartphone, even if you cannot afford it. Rapid cloud adoption provides flexibility in the storage of content, curriculum, sharing, and access to both learners and content providers. In this context, e-learning is nothing but a process of acquiring knowledge as well as imparting knowledge through electronic technology and resources. We all know that a rise in the number of internet users has increased the market demand for sophisticated online learning courses. The availability of enhanced network connectivity. 4G is not enough. With online learning, I'm sure we need 5G, which I'm told has a minimum capacity of 100,000 Mbps. 1000 Mbps minimum. And in which case, coupled with the convenience of offering on-demand courses, will drive the market size. The virtual classroom technology and the virtual laboratory technology, about which Doctor will speak more, is a e-learning market expected to grow at a CAGR of 11% during the forecast time span. Of course, this is the latest information after the COVID. And a virtual classroom is a digital environment that enables live interaction between the tutor and the learner. Other day, I attended one program from Festo. May I request Nikita Srikanta to switch off her video. The Festo's program was an online interactive program where they teach electrical engineering technology through an acquired company called LabVolt. Electrical engineering tech. One can connect a motor through a three-phase wiring, etc., etc., and the student and teacher are interacting with each other. I personally attended that. The virtual classroom is a digital environment that enables live interaction between tutor and the learner. Video conferencing and online whiteboard for real-time collaboration are the most common tools used in the digital teaching space. Synchronous and collaborative virtual classes allow active participation of students. Earlier, we had a classroom capacity of 10 to 20. I think it can be even 200 to 2000. And very important point before I close my remark is, I belong to the skilling industry also. Now, Dr. Subramania has installed more than 20 centers of excellence in RV College. And a similar work is going on in BMS College. Similar work is going on in Sona College in Salem. So every one of the higher education institutions, PSG College was setting the forerunner of these things more than 10 years back. And then we have the Orissa C.V. Raman group of institutions who set up the trend even 5 years back. So in the skilling industry, this is going to explode. Online learning is going to explode. Interactive learning is not only through simulation, and it is also immersive learning techniques. Underline the word immersive learning techniques, such as augmented reality. And National Skill Development Corporation, NSDC, has launched a platform for e-skilling. And any of you can avail of that. Prithvi, we have a lot of disturbance from the audios. Please request my audience. And my last remark for the day, before I hand over the baton and mic to Dr. Subramania, e-learning in higher education. Higher education includes engineering education, technology, higher education, technical education. Especially, I would like to underline future technology requirements, such as Industry 4.0, augmented reality, artificial intelligence, cloud computing, robotics and automation, digital manufacturing, digital quality engineering, and so on and so forth, with a good blend of theory and practice, is not accomplished by many universities anywhere in the world like RV College has achieved. The hybrid model of RV College Engineering is an eye-opener to many engineering institutions anywhere in the world. I welcome Dr. K. N. Subramania, who is a pioneering professor. He used to be in the industrial engineering department, heading the department in RV College. And I think more of it, Prithvi did not mention, but we interact very closely with Dr. Subramania on the Industry Institute committee. And he has conducted many workshops in the last couple of years for Bangalore Chamber and other organizations. He has got a workshop called Industry Institute Interface within his own college. And he will today deliver his lecture and presentation of Education 4.0. On that note, I request Dr. Subramania to take over and deliver his presentation. In a few minutes, I'll switch on my video and audio. All questions can be put in the chat box, and I'll pick it up at the end of the session. Dr. Subramania will go up to 12 to 12.15, that is 12 o'clock to 12:15 maximum. And then we'll have question answer for 15 minutes or beyond if some more people are still interested. Already 125 logged in, and I'm sure this is going to be a trend setter in the future webinars of Bangalore Chamber of Industry and Commerce. My closing remark for the day is this is the 6th of the series of webinars we did in Industry 4.0 within the month of May. I thank Prithvi, I thank Rupa and the organizers, Dr. Devesh Agarwal, Office Bearer President, Mr. Parasuraman, Senior Vice President, and K.R. Shekhar, Vice President of the Bangalore Chamber of Industry and Commerce, to give the opportunity. This is the sixth webinar in a series of 6 webinars in the last 1 month. And thank you so much for all the organizers and speakers to put it together. Thank you so much, sir. Over to Dr. Subramania.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Good morning to all of you. I hope all of you are in a position to see my slides.
Yes, sir. We are able to see your slides. Thank you.
Okay, sir. So I thank Chandramouli, who is the past president of BCIC and presently the chairperson of Industry 4.2 at BCIC, Bangalore. And I would also thank BCIC for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts on the hybrid model for higher education, new normal. And my presentation would be actually on this note. I think Chandramouli has set up a very good context setting he has done, but my focus would be more on not on the industry side, it will be on the higher education side. And in particular, I think my focus would be on the engineering education, since I have little experience in that. So let us try to look into what all the things which are happening in the country or in the world. We will see with respect to the higher education. And then slowly we'll move into the hybrid learning model which I'm sure, in fact, I was just looking into the names. Many are faculty here. Some of the things may be a repetition for you, but I try to put little bit in an organized way. And at the end of the lecture, I think I want all the faculty and the other people to start thinking on how to exactly bring the hybrid. In fact, there is synonymous word for this is blended learning also. So how to bring about these things, because by and large, this hybrid or blended learning model has started recent times, and it's all happening in discrete way and bits and pieces. But very few institutions maybe in the country who have institutionalized all this hybrid learning model. So my focus would be on thinking on how to make it happen, because at the end of the day, I think the faculty are the people who have to execute these things apart from the other stakeholders in the education. With respect to this, it need not be only hybrid modeling. What are some of the initiatives we have done for the teaching learning process in RVC? I am going to inform you, and also opportunities ahead, and I'll have a concluding remarks. I think this is the presentation outline I'm going to have. So the setting the context is basically, you would have seen that sometimes back, I'm sure all of you know that Vision 2035 document was brought out by Government of India by Anil Kakodkar being the chairman of the committee. And education is one such sector they have taken, apart from all the other sectors like transportation, infrastructure, and other sectors also. So you can imagine, sometimes back already government has set a vision for 2035. As Chandramouli was telling, this was done pre-COVID. But what all the areas they put as 2035, I am sure it is going to happen very quickly now. Many of the things what has been stated here in the Vision 2035, it could be in terms of, let us say, adaptive learning, or it could be adaptive learning, then testing, then collaborative and social learning, then flipped classroom, which has been already started, then game-based learning, hybrid or blended learning, which I'm going to talk now, and then the analytics part of it, then the MOOCs, which has been already started, then the remote or the internet labs, reputation metrics, virtual learning environments. So you can imagine government has thought over for a long time, and all these things have been put, but this was done pre-COVID, as I already suggested, I was already telling, and now actually post-COVID, I am sure whatever people have taught for 2035, I don't think it may have to wait until that. It may happen in next 5 years. You can see a lot of changes in the higher education. And the kind of technologies people talk about, here is that the 3D printing, which is already there. But I think Chandramouli will appreciate that Industry 4.0 is focusing a lot of such technologies. But the thing is that if you take care of the educational institutions, I think we might have been a little bit behind when compared to the industries. And so these are the future technologies, the 3D printing, the 4G, 5G communication technologies, artificial intelligence, brain-computer interface, cloud computing, gesture recognition, holography, IoT, then machine augmented cognition, photonics, quantum computing, real-time translation, volumetric screens, and wearable technologies. So that means you are going to see all these things as a part of the skill development, or you are going to see these things as a part of the laboratories in the higher education institutions. So it's not that having only research facilities. Initially, all these things may be created as a research facility, but as of making into a lab and all the students gets exposed to these things will be happening after some time. So maybe people have to look into that some of these things will become a part of the overall laboratory. And so these are the future technologies they are expected even in the education field, and this is the need of the industry already. So this will give an overall picture of what is the vision on education. With respect to this, in fact, AICTE, UGC, MHRD, all the people are working towards this, including the universities. Have already started looking into all these things. In fact, AICTE has mandated a lot of such things like, say, 20% online learning has been already put as a mandate for all the education and engineering institutions in the country. So this should set the context that I think all of us have to work towards this, and we may all be working. In fact, I'm sure that we are all in different levels in all those things, but my focus is on institutionalizing all those things. Maybe few faculty, few departments in colleges may be using it, but how to institutionalize is a big question mark, because it needs a lot of other things to be augmented if you want to make this as a reality. So this is a very important document for us to proceed further in the next 10 to 15 years in the field of higher education. In fact, it's totally in the education field, but our focus is on the higher education. Then I think he was Chandramouli was also telling about the Global Economic Forum. So if you look into the kind of skills, so can you match what all the vision which have been set with what are the skills accepted by the sectors, various sectors of the global economy? And this becomes our imperative that are we providing all these kinds of skills to our engineering students in particular in the institutions. So as far as the 21st century skills are concerned, there are foundation literacies, then you have competencies in their own area of expertise. Let us say if you take an electronics engineer or a computer science engineer or a mechanical engineer, with respect to his area of interest, I think how he can solve a problem, critical thinking, the creativity and the innovation part of it, how can he communicate? This communication would be entirely different from the human communication what we talk about, because this talks about a lot of technology here and also collaboration. I think today, doing in unison or with a wall in between will not work. I think collaborative works are very, very important. So today, if you talk about within the college, how departments are getting collaborated, and within the department, how faculty are getting collaborated is the first thing. The next thing would be 2 to 3 institutions are they collaborating as of now to do something better, because X college may have some expertise and the Y college may have expertise in something else. I think if we can collaborate, I think we can achieve much better and we can develop good engineers actually who have both the knowledge, skill, both are required. And another most important thing is the character qualities. In fact, this is where I am going to have one more slide on these things and see that you are talking about a millennial population or the millennial generation or generation X or generation Y or Z, whatever you talk about. So when you talk about these people, I'm sure that some of the things like say curiosity, initiative, all these things are beautifully there. But the social and cultural awareness, their ethics part of it, the self-discipline part of it, I think we have to focus more on this. In fact, they say in an engineering college, can you have at least 30 to 40% on the liberal arts part of it and the humanities part of it, so that you make a complete human being. So you look into this, there are the human characteristics which people look at, and other is the competency in their own areas, and irrespective of whether is a manager or engineer or a scientist, the foundational literacies are very important, which is needed for everybody in the higher education. I hope now the faculty or who are all there in the education field now start thinking the kind of courses. If you take an engineering student, he goes through at least 45 to 50 courses in 4 years. So can you look into all these courses and see how we have built all those skills into the 4-year learning itself? I think this is a first mapping. I'm sure all of us have to do it. If we don't do these mappings, typically what happens is we will not be contributing to the global economy, and our students will not be employable. I think you already have the employability problem. So our education has to help the industries in this aspect and try to make sure that you try to give all the skills apart from the knowledge to the younger generation or the millennial population, what we talk about. Then when Industry 4.0 came into being, I think slightly during the similar time, I think Education 4.0 also came into being. What is this all about? I think I put one word which is very, very important, which is called as a self-directed learning. So typically what happens here is that as of now, we are in a mode of teaching. It is a one-way communication. And now we have felt maybe around 200, 300 years, we have done this total exercise of one-way communication with a blackboard or whatever it is, whatever is our mode of communication. But many times it has been successful, sometimes it has not been successful. And people, because of the technology development, have felt that now there is a lot of, in fact, there is an overflow of information actually. So can you look into how can we guide? Today's teacher's role is actually the mentoring role, then guiding role, and a facilitated role rather than the teaching role. Because if I talk about machine learning as a course, you just browse Google, you'll get hundreds and hundreds of course contents developed by a lot of people in the country, universities, industries, and all the other solution providers. So in that sense, there is a lot of information which is already available, which was missing maybe 30, 40 years when we were doing engineering. So we used to stick to a textbook or one or two textbooks through that we are supposed to do it. But today it's not like that. So, but the faculty's role, has it changed? That is a thing I think every faculty has to think on those lines. So education 4.2, the crux here is we should only guide, facilitate students with whatever they have with them with a self-directed learning. I think that is the core of education 4.0. And education 4.0 also advocates that let us say if you take a traditional teaching, there are 60 students in a class. I think there is a monotony in teaching, but the student learning style, the kind of students we have, if you take, there's a variability in the students who are present in the class. But our teaching has been the same way. So here they advocate, can you have a personal one-to-one relationship? I think now you see that whatever teaching I am doing here in a webinar, it is one-to-many kind of a relationship. So can I have one-to-one? In fact, one of my neighbor is there. Actually, she has done music MA, and there is one student in USA. And early morning, 5 o'clock, she'll be sitting in front of the laptop, and she'll be teaching music to him, who is in the States. So that's a one-to-one kind of a relationship which people talk about. So I am sure this is going to come here very shortly. These things you can see. So the personal touch and the personal thing would be there. Then the flexible delivery. I think many other times we feel that our delivery mechanisms or the methods are a little bit rigid. How can we make it more flexible? And today, as I've already told you, I think mentors and peers, in fact, I am sure many of the faculty will understand the kind of information which goes into the mind of a student just before the examination. You see, before the examination, when students are sitting, the peer learning actually has got a lot of effect. I don't know, this peer learning is in fact very informal in nature, but we are not given a value for that. So can you look into peers and the mentoring, which has to be done not just by the teacher himself or herself, it could be anybody who is good in that subject, who can tell the knowledge in a better way. So now there is a question of what and how has gone because of the availability of the internet and the information overflow is already there. But why and where is a very, very important aspect which Education 4.2 advocates. And then people look at, let us say, more of practical applications. In fact, if you take our whole of our engineering education out of 50 courses, the practical courses what we have may not be more than 10 to 15, including the project work. But engineer is a person who is supposed to do things. So I'm not saying conceptually things are not needed. Conceptual along with the skill for every course is going to add a lot of value. So maybe we always feel that practicals means we expect a lab to be there. So it need not be always a physical lab. I think if you see a figure there, I think she is working in a iPad. There are a lot of things like say virtual labs have come already into being. So can you look into wherever possible to have more practical applications, because we have seen that more of actually learning happens, and what are the concepts you teach to the practice, it will be always much better. And modular and project oriented. In fact, project based learning is becoming very, very important nowadays, and it's a modular approach because we cannot get stuck to one way of syllabus, because the modular means can I quickly take 3-4 modules and make it into a course for a particular branch of engineering. So modular approach is also one of the things which people are looking for. It's just like a jigsaw puzzle. I can take 3-4 modules and make it into one course, so which is very much helpful as far as the employability is concerned, as far as the student learning is concerned. But as of now, we see that there's a lot of forcing from this side, from the faculty side to the students in the classroom kind of a setup. And ownership of a student has to be, I think, this we have to question and check it, because I don't say all students are like this. At least 30 to 40% may be good, but 40 to 50% of the students, still that ownership has to come for the learning. If that comes, then we can achieve much more. Then the last point is evaluated and not examined. I think this is a question which is haunting many of the people. We are going to judge a student apart from a continuous learning. Let us say if a 50-50%, let us say our internal assessment is 50%, final examination is 50%. Internal assessment is done for a whole semester. That is good. You are evaluating a student over a period of time on a continuum scale. But there is one more examination which is conducted 50% of the marks. You are going to judge a student just by 3 hours examination. I think this is the one which people are questioning us for a long time. And if you take a developed country, the percentage given for the final examination is slowly going away. As of now, you can take on an average, it will be 70% on the internal assessment and 30% on the external examination. So still, I think in our country, that fear for exam, I think it has not gone out. So we had to look into these things. I think Education 4.0 is going to address such things also. So if you see all these points, I think the role of a faculty, in fact, they say it's a student-centric learning. I feel in a student-centric learning, in the center faculty is there. But only thing is faculty has to mentor or do a kind of support to the student and try to guide him in a better way, so that self-directed learning typically happens. Why the self-directed learning is important is it's very long-term in nature, and people are going to remember these things for a long time. So this is precisely what Education 4.0 is advocating. And I think many of the people who are listening to this are seeing this PPT. Now we can start looking into thinking mode. How much of you have as of now? I think that is the starting point. Where do we stand? If we stand at 0.0 level also, it doesn't matter. But you start measuring it now. Where do we stand? If you start looking into it, then what happens is over a period of time, because this not happen, Rome was not built in one day. It will not happen in one day, because it has to have a lot of changes which has to happen in the system, the institution, the human behavior pattern, acceptance by the students. Lot of things has to happen here. So of course, this Education 4.0 is driven by a lot of things which is from the society as such. It is based on the skills whatever I already told, and lifelong learning is another thing. People, whatever they study now, how they can try to go on applying under different circumstances, different situations in the future. So lifelong learning, and the most important point, I think I at least personally spend a lot of time is understanding this mindset of a millennial. I'm sure all of the children in your house also, you find it how to study this mindset, because whatever you say, they have an answer for that. So when they come back to the education, how to change this mindset, see that they have to, because the listening skills are coming down, and also the retention in whatever I'm telling. I'm sure that I'm giving, let us say, 50 minutes to 1 hour lecture to you. But if I give continuously like this for 50 minutes to 1 hour lecture, I think I don't know how many students will be actively listening to that. I think the retention is somewhere around 15 minutes. So we are supposed to understand the millennial mindset. Then I already told the collaboration platforms. Then digital networks, you know that a lot of things are already available. Then investing in the talent is a very important thing which has come out from the industry side, and shared content and resources. There was a time wherein it was a property of a teacher, one notes or one thing he writes, but today it's not like that. Everything is available, everybody. In fact, MIT started putting their open source things, maybe around 2000 they started putting into the world. So in that way, shared content is always good, because there's always a learning, there's always a comment which come, through which you can also try to improve. And of course, all these things at the end of the day should be helpful for our societal progress. So the drivers for Education 4.0 is these points, whatever I explained to you now. And see who are the people in the education field, have to look into the left side of the slides. I think this is precisely, very briefly, about what is Education 4.0. And do you think nothing is happening in our country? It's not like that. Actually, we also have a governance framework. It could be the statutory bodies, could be the central government, the state governments, AICTE, UGC. You talk about, we have a lot of statutory bodies who from time to time are doing a lot of changes, and we have been doing it. And next is a recent, maybe if you take last 1 decade, for example, this ranking framework also has become very, very important. We were not giving much importance before, but the ranking and the accreditation framework, looking into the quality of education, is going to play a very huge role in the future actually. Presently also it is doing like NBA, NAC, is all, many institutions are getting accredited, but the rankings, whatever we talk about, let us say, Government of India is interested in the last 4 years NIRF ranking. So people look into it. In fact, the present generation, the millennials are very, very smart. Even before joining their college, they're asking all these details. Whether you have NBA for this program, what is your NIRF ranking and things of that sort. And slowly, people are going to ask the world ranking also. And I'm sure that many times We also look into the media surveys. Of course, maybe sometimes we may have to take with a pinch of salt these media surveys, but still it will give some indication to the general public. So I always believe that what cannot be measured cannot be improved. And these are very important statements in fact, the industries, that we have to take all these things, the plus and the minus, and what are the negatives somebody says as a third person, we should try to improve. So as of now, this is the governance framework which is happening. But on the right side, you see a new normal which is going to come. I'm sure all of you know that already National Education Policy has been written, and it was in the public domain for some time. And many people have got many input, and now already MHRD has prepared the final copy, and actually it is awaiting the cabinet approval. So as per this, all the statutory bodies what were there, I think it will all be under one umbrella called as Higher Education Promotion Council, called HEPC. Under that, there will be 4 things: National Educational Regulatory Commission, National Accreditation Council, then Higher Education Grants Council, and General Education Council. So this is yet to come. I think this will be a new normal. Maybe you can see the after COVID, I think already people are in the final stages of doing these things. Maybe in another 1 year, the activities of all these things are going to be helpful to us. So as a new normal, I think even in education, just like industries are seeing the, as far as their economy is concerned, but developing the intellectual capital or the human capital, I think we have large role to play as an education institutions. So this is the governance framework which all of us are working. So this is another important thing. As many of you know that we also switched over to something called as an outcome-based education, because many times versus an output-based education, student would have scored, people say that 80%, but if you ask some basic things he may not be knowing, and he is not employable and things of that sort. But India became the member of the Washington Accord for the outcome-based education in 2014, and from that time onwards, I think majority of the institutions in the country are going into this outcome-based education mode, which has got outcome-based curriculum, because every course is supposed to have an outcome. And then outcome-based teaching learning, I think this is very important for the hybrid again. How exactly the teaching learning has to be enhanced so that your outcome is much better. And outcome-based assessment, I think slowly we have started, and some time it may take for us to go out from the, I don't say examination is not important, but I think the focus should be more on the assessment of a student. So this is again on the outcome-based education. But as far as the courses are concerned, how do you evaluate? Because many of our examination system will try to measure the performance of a student only to the lower order levels. There's a remembering and the understanding has been there for a long time. He has to mug up all the things. He should remember it, a circuit diagram, then understand it and reproduce it in the examination. I think we were always focusing on the lower order thinking. But now I think you would have seen in the last 5 to 6 years, there's a lot of focus on the higher order thinking. I think Bangalore being the startup hub, you see that the higher order thinking will have a lot of role in the future. So this already in bits and pieces in discrete way, I think many institutions have already started looking into it. So moving from a lower order thinking of remembering and understanding, from there going into the application part, and to the analyzing part, then evaluation, and then creating. Creation is typically creating a new product, new process, or a new system. I'm sure many of the institutions are following this pattern of a Bloom's taxonomy. In fact, this is a revised Bloom's taxonomy. Bloom is a person who did somewhere in 1956 Bloom's taxonomy, which is a part of many of the higher education system in USA. And this has been slowly taken to our National Board of Accreditation. And now they're all expecting us to follow this Bloom's taxonomy and try to see move our students from a lower order thinking to a higher order thinking. And I'm sure there's a lot of responsibility and onus on the educators. So that is precisely about the context setting. So we are in work in progress in all the things. So one side looking into the skill, what is needed by the industry, other end meeting all the requirements of the accreditation is one end, looking into what is expected out of education through vision or through an international bodies, or then looking into again what exactly is happening in the institutions. So this is the context setting I wanted to give you, and we are all, I'm sure everybody is in work in progress. We are all at different levels. So keeping this in mind, so no, these are all the strategic level or at the program level I'm talking about. Now let us come into a little bit down and looking into the hybrid learning model. So let me go into the hybrid learning model straight away. So what is this hybrid learning model all about? As the name itself suggests, it is hybrid. I am sure that we are in the path of doing a classroom, and then we are also looking into online. I think let me also tell you, majority of the institutions in the country now in the last 1.5 or 2 months straight away switched over to the online. You may always ask a question: is there a preparedness for all those things? I think those are some of the challenges I'm going to highlight to you. So hybrid learning, in fact, is going to look into something of a combination, because people keep always asking, do you feel only online learning will work, or the offline is not at all needed? There are a lot of schools of thoughts which people always say, but according to me, let me tell you, it should be a combination of the offline and the online. I don't think we can face to face, we can totally avoid, but you can go on reducing it wherever the lower order thinkings are there. When you come to the higher order thinking levels, definitely the face to face interaction among the people would be very much essential. So this is very briefly about the hybrid model what we talk about. So it is a course delivery, or it would be all the courses which are involved, or could be the projects, whatever it is. There will be a combination of a face-to-face along with the online activities. Let me tell you, majority of us are still or in the introduction stage of creating a hybrid model for all our courses, whatever we are teaching. Because so many years I've been doing a classroom teaching in a particular subject, whereas I may be using a PPT. For example, PowerPoint presentations are used for a long time. But is it online? Actually, it is not. Online skills needed, online way of teaching needed, is all little bit development has to happen. Human resource development has to happen in this area. I'm sure that people have realized during the COVID period. I'm sure teachers are very intelligent also, and they're already trying to adapt to the system. But if you want to make it a perfect situation, it's going to take some more time for us. So very briefly, the components, as I've already told you, in a traditional instruction, it is face-to-face. In enhanced instruction, face-to-face, along with the PowerPoints and things of that sort would be used. And hybrid model, as I've already told you, use this. Online is a pure one. So on the left-hand side, you have a pure offline mode, and on the right-hand most side, you have a pure online mode. So there is a question that everything can it be done online? I think it's a question mark. I am sure that at least in the technical education, where you have a combination of the laboratory, skill development, hardware related labs, all these things, definitely I'm sure that the offline would be definitely there. But online, wherever the lower order thinking, where things can be done a little bit better than offline learning, could be done online. So these are the components of a hybrid or a blended learning. And what are the principles? Can you look into it when you are trying to look into a hybrid learning? Designing hybrid learning, I think these points have to be taken into consideration. Just now, I think because of the urgency, all of us have done the online teaching in the last 1.5 months. But have you taken care of these things? But when you are trying to look into a long-term sustainability, looking into the technology, using the technology, connecting to the bigger picture, in fact, many of our places, the reflection we don't pay attention to. We may do the things, reflection and applying into the reality. So how we have to do it? Then making and building. As I already told you, all these come under the higher order thinking, the Bloom's taxonomy. Then making learning social. How can you make it very freely, anytime, anywhere? How can you make this? And educators being facilitators. I've already told you that we should come out of the mode of that teaching. You should come out, you should see you're a facilitator, student is already having the information with him, but how to enhance that through our better knowledge is the one which you have to look into it. And cultivating the growth mindset. This is very important because if you take engineering per se, I don't know whether all the 100% of the students have joined with interest. There may be different kinds of students, there is a lot of heterogeneity. So can you try to cultivate in them the growth mindset rather than looking into only the negativities in the society or in the education, whatever happens. So this is another thing, because when you go online, I'm sure that now I'm talking to you, but am I making an impact on you? Still, I'm not sure. So precisely this is what is going to happen in online. But whenever you are trying to ask a question, then we can try to look into that. So designing for diversity. So as I already told you, when I'm teaching machine learning, let us say for a computer science student, it will be in an offline mode. We are already doing that. So the way I teach for a computer science student would be something different. Let us say, now I made machine learning as a compulsory subject for all the students and all the branches. Now a diversity is there. That means machine learning basic fundamentals remains the same, but the application of machine learning is different for mechanical, different for electrical. When a faculty is teaching in a class, how he is going to take care of this same subject but different application is definitely a challenge according to me. Or else, can 2 to 3 faculty join together and take one class? Is one other thing you can look into when designing for diversity. So diversity, I'm talking within engineering only. It could be for other things also. Let us say supply chain management, for example. It's needed even for the MBA students. I'm teaching for MBA as well as for engineers. So there's a diversity. So how you design a course for a diversity is another important thing. Then having a prototyping mindset. That means anything you do, can you see it as a product? Can you see it as a process? Can you look into the system? You may be good in solving a textbook problem, but I think we may have to go a little bit more than that, looking into solving a real problem in the society. Then what happens is prototyping, understanding, all these things are going to play a very, very important role. And I think we will be adding more value to the students. Then making progress visible. Many times what happens is, I'm sure that because of the internet and Facebooks, whatever smallest things are done also, I think people are trying to look into it. Whereas visibility, even though some good things are happening, it not be there. I think because of the online, there's a visibility. Let us say all the people from different colleges, maybe around 100 to 120 are listening to my, I think like this, otherwise I would be teaching only for my college faculty or my college students. I think this is the visibility which happens to the individual faculty also, and empowering learners to lead their learning. This is very important. I think self-directed learning is the essence of the hybrid learning. I think this slide is very, very important for me. I think people can do a lot of research work in this learning mode, because what happens is one side is totally online, other side is totally offline. So how do you blend it? I will give a simple example and an assignment for all the people who are teaching. So what you can do is, you are teaching a subject on, let us say, data structures. Can you tell me, for a data structure, what will be the learning mix optimization? I have to look into it. How much percentage should be lab? How much percentage should be a real problem taking and solving it? How much should be the concept? Can a student do a technical paper? Can I call a guest faculty and ask him to teach? So this chart is very important for me, because in 4 years, around 45 courses, whatever student goes through, I think all these combinations can be worked out according to me, based on the type of subject, because there is no one shoe fit all. I think every course needs a different kind of an approach. So whatever is needed for your approach, a group of faculty with a course coordinator for that particular course can join together. Let us say subject X. I can go for virtual lab, I can go for exploratory learning, I can look into problem-based problem along with the conceptual understanding could be one subject. Other subject could be a combination of only experimentation, research-oriented learning, and project-based learning, along with, let us say, YouTube videos. So this combination, I think this is the urgency. I request all the teachers in particular, all they're here, please start working on these lines, at least for the next academic year. Have a one dashboard with you. If you're in a department, there are, let us say, 45 courses a student goes through. Can I have one dashboard, whatever I prepared here? Course X, what are the modes of delivery, the content, and other things, whatever is needed, can be given to him in the beginning of the semester itself. So then what happens? People try to get tuned. So hybrid learning is very good model. I think many people are already doing it, but I want all of you to look into a systematic way of doing it. Otherwise, what happens is getting the outcome would be very, very difficult. So you can forget any of these slides, whatever I'm giving in this presentation. This one slide, I request all of you to please keep it in mind and see that in your course, whatever you are handling, or in fact, even for the training programs in the industries, you are giving some training programs. What combination works the best? I don't think we don't have any papers on these things. In fact, being the faculty, we can also create what could be a learning, just like a product mix problem or a media mix problem. We can also look into a learning mix problem based on the type of course whatever we are dealing. So I have put only some of the models which are available. There may be a lot of other things which people may be doing in the offline as well as online. How to combine is the essence of a hybrid learning model. I will leave these slides anyway, but I will go into some of the important platforms. These are the representative platforms which you are looking for. In the sense, let us say have online class conduction tools. Very few are given. Don't take me wrong, because I am not have put all the things here. People may be using other than this also many other things. Then we have learning management tools in the other category. Screen recorders is other. I'm sure many of us would be using Cam Studio many times through your mobiles. Then there is innovative teaching tools. Actually, many of our faculty in the class use, let us say, Plickers, for example. in the class, just like your Kaun Banega Crorepati questions, no? You can ask suddenly a question to a student and get a reply from a student. It's possible in the class. So Jeopardy labs, thinking, think, pair, share, and of course YouTube videos, Plickers, TEDx, TED education models are very good. So all such innovation models can also be used. Apart from that, online assessment tools is one more thing which I think people use Moodle, Google Forms, and then Socrative is another area. And in our college, we use something called the Quick Learn, conducting the quizzes, conducting the tests. So when people want to look into the digital platform, these are the 4 categories actually you can look into and try to augment with whatever the offline mode you are doing or face-to-face communication you are doing. So that is about briefly about the hybrid learning. As I've already told you, I request all of you to please look into this slide and start working. It may take 2 to 3 months for your course to decide on what should be the best mix for you to teach a student so that the outcome is good. In fact, let me also tell you, when you are doing these things, please involve your students also. I think they'll give better ideas also to us, and our learning, their learning would be much better. Then quickly I will browse through the initiatives at RV College of Engineering. So during COVID period, we conducted a lot of online classes. We have almost conducted 6,500 classes in the last 1.5–2 months. And of course, 370 faculty have handled, and 6,000 plus beneficiaries, students are there. And we have used all these modes: shared lecture, notes or presentations, course delivery through online classes, assignments, seminars and projects, online discussion of questions and answers, and VTU has given e-Shikshana material. We have also shared that to the students, and digital library and the resources, the other thing we have used. And of course, for conducting the classes, I think people have used all the kinds of things, because many of these are open source, which are available freely now for the people, and they have used all these things. It could be Zoom, Google Meet, Google Drive, YouTube, WhatsApp, Skype, and Cisco WebEx. All these things have been effectively used, and these are the e-resources. I think all of you would be knowing that government, university, everybody is sending from time to time IEEE, VTU Consortium, MHRD, AICTE, SWAYAM, then NPTEL courses, then Coursera, and in fact, in the period of 1.5 months, 6,000 of our students have registered for all the Coursera courses to augment their knowledge. And NPTEL is another thing which faculty and students are taking. So these are the e-resources which are already available actually. So now our job is to how smartly to make use of all these things, make it a hybrid learning, so that we minimize the time on the lower order thinking and give more time on the higher order thinking skills. Then many faculty have been trained in the area of online certification. Then Coursera, as I've already told you, I think people are very happy with majority of the courses which are available here. Apart from the NPTEL, whatever our people do, I think this is a graph. You need not to worry too much about what is there in this graph. But I would like to say that a lot of faculty and the students across the country are registering for these NPTEL courses, which is a course of 4 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, and 16 weeks. I'm sure a lot of learning is happening through this, because this is also helping the faculty for him to prepare his own lectures through either online, offline, or the combination mode. And then we also have a Pearson education. In fact, communication, the English has been taught online at least for the last 3 to 4 years in our college. It is considered as a lab actually. So there is no English teacher who is going to teach this, because we are teaching business English here. There will be a course coordinator, and the students go through all the things, because this we have seen is helpful for students for taking GRE, TOEFL, and all such online examinations. Then we are a part of a virtual lab. We are in fact NITK Surathkal under the MHRD initiatives are taking a lot of nodal centers in Karnataka, and we are a part of a nodal center, nodal part with the NITK Surathkal, and many of these courses already the virtual labs are going on, and I think there's a lot of scope for improvement in these virtual labs, which is going to add a lot of value under such uncertain situations. Then very interestingly, we have one thing called as a design thinking lab actually. So in this lab, I think I request people to look into this, because what happens is our education system is inward looking. We don't go back to the society, look into the problem and come back and try to solve. We go from here to there, and we may not even understand the problem correctly. So design thinking is a compulsory course for 2 credits for all the students in the college. And the first one, empathize stage, he has to go back to the society, go back to the industry, get the problem from them and define it, give new ideas. Hello?
These are the ಅಭಿನಂದನೆಗೆ PPT ತೋರಿಸಿಲ್ಲ. ಇಲ್ಲ. ನೀವು ನೋಡಿದ್ರೆ ನೋ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್.
I think muting has to be done.
Hello, I think there is a disturbance. Rupa, can you find out who it is and switch off their audio? Find out who it is and switch off the audio, please. Please switch off the audio of the person who's disturbing us. Hello.
Yeah. So typically what happens here is
sorry for the disturbance.
yes,
Yeah.
no problem, sir. So typically, for this is going to have a lot of value. I think I'm sure even many companies have started design thinking departments, and many of the institutions in the country are looking into it. In fact, I followed a path here in our college, having a design thinking lab, and then looking into things like this. So 2 credits in the second year, they do the design thinking, and many of the ideas gets up to the, let us say, prototype level, and they can take it forward as a 3 credit course in the mini project in the third year, and they can do that as a 16 credit part in the major project in the final year. So we have created almost around 21 credits as a project, problem, or product based learning. And at the end of the day, it comes out with a very good product which is patentable, which is innovative. We can also incubate in the campus. I think we have created this path to the students like this. Based on the interest of the students, we are supposed to create a lot of such paths, because some people would be interested to go become a startup. Some people would be employed only in employability. Some people would be interested in going for research. Some people would be interested in going for higher studies. So as of now, what happens is we are putting everybody in the same platform and teaching it. But now a time has come to look into the selective way of, can we, within the available constraints, whatever is there, can we make it to that so that students, the learning is going to become very good, and you will be very happy at the end of 4 years that, okay, whatever path I wanted to follow, these institutions have helped me. So this is one such thing I think every one of us can look into. Design thinking lab is one which is going to add a lot of value, particularly to the engineers. So here, when I'm talking about, there are a lot of actually hybrid learning which happens. So in the empathize phase, I can talk to the people face to face when I'm collecting the problem. I can also collect the data through my Google Forms or whatever it is. So this is where the ingenuity of the students and the faculty comes into picture. What can be made offline in this? What can be made online in this? For example, in a prototype, I can do a simulation using a software. Then I can do a physical experimentation, the characterization in the laboratories. So like this, every course, if you start looking into it, then we can provide a better outcome for the students. And as a part of this, we've also created a Center for Education Digital Learning in the institution, which is typically to develop MOOC courses by our faculty in the college, and also training on the pedagogy. I'm sure today pedagogy training is very, very important. I think if you ask me, for higher education, pedagogy word doesn't come into picture. There is something called the heterogogy. So that is self-directed learning, what we are telling. So pedagogy is a one-way communication of teaching in the class, but heterogogy is how to mentor him is the one which you have to do it. And also we can do a lot of research work. What I will apply, I mean, I've told in the last slides, there's a lot of research which has to happen to the India-centric issues. If you take any videos, if you take any journal papers, it's all to the developed countries. But how to fit that to my environment? Because my socio-economic culture is different, my students' patterns are different, my heterogeneity of students are different. So can we do this digital learning, come out with the innovative learning for the hybrid? So ours may be to suit the environment here. If we can do it, so straight away copying from one to the other will not help, according to me. I think we have to adapt by doing a lot of changes needed for this specific situation. And also adapting to the newer technologies could be, I told you, you have all these open sources. I think you take another 6 months, there'll be another 100 such technologies which are going to come in the, because every software company is moving towards the digital education nowadays. Every day, at least I get 10 calls from different kinds of people to go for these kinds of tools. I'm sure a lot of changes are going to happen in the 2 to 3 years in this online mode. And I think we have to be very, very careful while selecting all those things. And of course, you need hardware and software. I'm sure we have a data center in the college. 50 to 60% of our software can be accessed by any student in the college. except for the proprietary software, which is a hardware lock. Other than that, all these softwares can be accessed by any student in the campus. All these things are going to be helpful, and the faculty had to be made a little bit free of time. That's why we have a SAP ERP software to take care of the administration part of it, so that the mundane administration, the routine works can be transferred to the computer through our ERP software. So we also have this. So to this section we are done, and we are also mentoring the ICT enabled teaching learning for 11 institutions in the state as a part of AICTE Margadarshan program. Here, in fact, this is one plus point. I should thank AICTE. 2 years back we got it. Because of that, at least majority of the faculty during the COVID time, we did not face problem, because since 2 years people have already started looking into the digital learning. So that has definitely helped us. Of course, we have mentored other institutions also would have got benefit out of this, where we are doing the mentoring. And we, as I've already told you, we work with Quick Learn actually. Who typically what happens is every faculty prepares a material. Then that is put into a common platform. I think that integration part is taken care by Quick Learn. They also help us in conducting the quiz. So it's not that we have conducted quiz online only during the COVID period. We are doing the online quizzes for the last 3 years for the first and the second year. We are doing this year. We have switched over that to the third year also. So Quick Learning is helping us in all these things, in conduction of the examinations, randomizing the questions, diversity in questions. I think integration with the faculty members, all these people have worked on. That's why we are in a position to do the assessment of our students in a better way. And for the conduction of the tests, we have used exam.net as one of the things. So very quickly, let us look. I will not take more than 5 minutes. Very quickly looking into something called as what are the challenges we faced as of now. So let me tell you, the sustained interest among the students is a very difficult task. If a faculty is taking for 1 hour, we have seen some students are just switch on the mode and they may be listening to the music, we don't know. So or their patience levels are less. And how to handle, because all the people, because we have people from urban areas, semi-urban area, rural areas, because somebody in the city might have been exposed to these kinds of technologies since his schooling, but there may be some person who has come from other background who may not be, so he may need a little bit more time. So different students may have different capabilities. So how to handle that is a big challenge when you go for the hybrid, in particular the online learning. And of course, proprietary tools are available in a lot. We have to select this. Benchmarking the proprietary tools is one of the important challenges, and open source tools are available, which all of us have used, but it is vulnerable for the secured access. So security becomes a very big issue here. So that's why slowly we have to go for the enterprise versions. So, but while selecting the enterprise versions, what is needed for a particular situation, I think we have to do a lot of studies on this. This is a challenge. Then students' attention span, and let me also tell you, if you are going for a purely online, I think self-discipline of a student and the ethics among a student is very, very important. How do you measure this is a big question mark. We have to look into this. Then connectivity and accessibility of internet in remote locations. As I've already told you, I think government is going to take huge steps in this. When once the 5G comes, as Chandramouli was telling, I think the connectivity and accessibility is going to become very good. As of now, it's a challenge in some of the remote locations. Then it's not that everything is green where the faculty is concerned. I think preparedness with the technology and adapting to the different self-directed learning is one of the challenge. Maybe some percentage may be good, but some percentage will be mediocre. Some percentage has to learn this. Then how do you are going to conduct hardware labs and the hardware projects? So it's through online. It's not. In fact, we are all facing this problem as of now. How to do the experimentation, the characterization in a project. Then conducting online assessments for regular needs huge preparation. See, quiz conduction is an easy affair, but when I'm expecting a detailed descriptive kind of a thing for a regular course, I think a lot of work has to be done. This again challenge we are looking into. And of course, access to the laptop and the tablets to browse the e-resources and e-libraries is another challenge which are faced with some, at least 5 to 10% of the students. Also, because of the accessibility and connectivity problem, need for iCloud, hard disk, flash drives, and is again a problem for certain percentage of the students. So these are some of the challenges we have seen. And very quickly, if you see, it is not that only we have conducted the classes and found out the challenges. We have also taken a feedback from the faculty and the students. And if you look into the kind of faculty feedback we have seen, so online sessions are informative and effective to students. Faculty, of course, has to say, because So he has to tell that. But still in that, many people are telling that, so only 70% is a positive response. Similarly, my students feel connected to peers during the session. If you take the third question, it's only 60%. So similarly, whichever is the least here. If you take, I enjoy teaching the process during my online session. It's only 56% because many of the faculty feel that the face-to-face interaction and talking to a student may add more value. I think there's a feeling among the faculty. We cannot neglect this. So these are some of the realities. I'm sure from now on, if you go into the institution, all those things, basically, if you institutionalize these things, it can enhance our teaching learning process in the future. So we have also done a student feedback. What is their feedback? I think this feedback is also very important along with the student feedback, faculty feedback. I'm sure for the next academic year, I'm going to take care of all these things and try to utilize different methodology of how to enhance our teaching learning process. So we have done a sample size of 600 students. So do you prefer online classes? See, if you see, the answer would be, let us say 48% agrees. By and large, people also, students also prefer, but 28% still feel that they don't prefer online classes. So do you prefer pre-recorded course videos before online? 60% strongly agree that pre-recorded course videos have to be sent to them, and then if you explain, things would be easier. Then do you prefer course material beforehand? I think people feel that 91% feel that I think course material has to be sent before taking the online classes. Now what has happened is some of the faculty might not have given the notes. After the lecture they might have given the notes. I think further this feedback has come. So like this, we have also taken a feedback from all the students as a sample of 600 students, and this feedback is very important for us to proceed further. I think he's a most important stakeholder, and we look into that how to improvise on all these things in the online as well as the hybrid mode. So then again, course contents delivered effectively. So they feel that very effective is only 40% say it's effective, satisfactory is 50%. I think since you're doing for the first time, I think this is a good feedback according to me. Almost around 90% of the people say course content delivered effectively. So 10% of the people still feel. So now I should bother about the 10% and satisfactory students and try to get more feedback from them and try to enhance the system. So like this question and answers were encouraged in the online session. I think almost 50% say that faculty have encouraged the question answer session in the online mode. So like this, the faculty was able to understand the concepts clear. 40% strongly agree, 47% are satisfied. So 8.2% are not satisfied. I am sure, I think being the principal of a college or the head of the department or the faculty, this feedback has to be taken in a right spirit and try to improve on the system for the coming academic years. So the opportunities are, I have already told you that there are a lot of other opportunities in the future. Doing a virtual labs for the hardware experimentation is a new challenge. And in fact, I request Chandramouli also to look into how industries can be collaborated with this in conducting a virtual labs, so that our learning of even the hardware related experiments should be experienced through the online mode. And a strategy for storage, because I'm sure that all of us have the, if you just go to your desktop and look into the kind of storage you have, I think majority junk only. So through, if you can imagine whole country, everybody looks into all the storage, there will be a digital waste, just like 7 wastes in the industries. You also see a digital waste. So how to optimize on this is very, very important. That means your overall digital content, there should be optimization which has to be done. Then people feel that conceptual courses is okay, but there is a lot of research which has to be done in a combination of the lot of people are already working in the artificial intelligence area. I am sure this is a very, very new area to look into. I was other day looking into a Microsoft team, their online software, and they came and explained to me they have done a lot of AI models already applied to this learning as well as the online assessment process. And I think there is a lot of scope in this area. I read one book also on artificial intelligence in education. There are already more than 100 to 200 papers Here the psychology comes into picture, the physiology comes into picture, technology comes into picture, your teaching methodology. So it's a totally interdisciplinary area. I cannot say only through technology I can do AI. Lot of interdisciplinary fields have to be done. And finally, to end that, you're supposed to be a digital strategy. And as of now, I'm sure majority of the institutions have bits and pieces of whatever I've done here. I'm sure as a part of the strategic planning in the future, post-COVID, every institution should have a digital roadmap, digital strategy as a part of the strategic planning, looking into all these things, the network infrastructure, whether fiber, wired, wireless, what is the bandwidth, how exactly, because bandwidth requirement keeps on increasing every quarter actually. The student was bringing only one mobile 5 years back. Today he brings smart mobiles, 2 to 3 he brings in a one student brings. So I have 6,000 means I got 8,000 or approximately 10 to 12,000 mobile phones are there. Along with that, I have all the other infrastructure facilities. So then data centers, or you want to go for a physical data center or you want to go for a private cloud, these are the decisions which you have to make. Then the hardware, firmware, the software infrastructure in the campus, digital media center for your recording all the things, then smart interactive boards so that your recording becomes very effective. Then e-journals and e-books, how you are going to integrate this with your hybrid learning is very important. So somewhere in our quick learn also, they've integrated, let us say have one particular unit, and in that unit actually, once some e-book is needed, under that one chapter is needed, if you click there, it's straightaway going to go into that chapter. So this is possible. Then digital pedagogy, then the course design, video conferencing facilities of the webcasting, then ICT tools for your delivery and the assessment platforms, and feedback is, it should be automatic mechanism. In fact, if you log out of this platform, whatever you're doing at the end, actually he says, how was the audio, how was the video? He takes a feedback immediately. I think for every activity, whatever you do, online immediate feedback if you take, this will be helpful. Otherwise, feedback we take at some discrete point of time, and I don't know what we will do with the feedback afterwards. So feedback becomes very important. It is helpful for the improvisation of the system. I'm sure that these kinds of roadmap would be very much essential. So my last slide, concluding remarks would be learn, unlearn, relearn is the mantra for the faculty. Then balancing the face-to-face and online learning and using hybrid model for effectiveness is another important area which you look into. Enhancing self-discipline and ethics among students when you look into a hybrid model is another important issue. Then this could be done through mentoring, counseling, all such things can be created here. Then developing learning resources based on the industry need and the employability has to be taken into consideration, because as Chandramouli suggested, he has told very new areas, could be a cobot, a robot, or could be a cloud computing and things of that sort. Then assessment of students rather than examining, we have to come out of that mode of examination and looking into the assessment. Then how to think outside the box without being so far out that nothing is implemented. So everybody says outside the box, because outside the box means how much outside, because implementation is also a very important issue. So a lot of innovation research has to happen in this. So knowing how to be a path maker rather than a path taker is very important post-COVID. I think today's survival of the fittest and the fastest is the mode. So you want to be a path maker or a path taker, that is going to decide whatever we are doing in the education sector. Then how to keep evolving personally and professionally to be in sync for the various changes and the corresponding challenges what we are facing. So these are some of the concluding remarks I wanted to give. I think I had to hurry up some of the slides. Sorry for that. These slides should be there. I'm available offline also. People can talk to me. And once again, thanking BCIC for giving me this opportunity to share my little experience, whatever I have in the field. And also thank Chandramouli in particular, who has taken initiative in organizing this through Industry 4.0. Once again, I thank all of you for the patience listening. And thank you very much once again. Now it is open to the question and answer sessions. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Dr. Subramania. It was a very, very comprehensive and very detailed presentation. This normally cannot be covered in 45 minutes or 1 hour. We are sorry for giving you less time. And as you yourself said, it is a challenge to keep the attention going in a webinar. And lunchtime coming close, let us see out of 150 people, how many have food for thought and how many have thought for the food. To begin with, I would like to, if people can close their audios and open it only when they want to ask a question, but I will talk the question if it is put in the chat box. We have very, very nice questions. I'll take the top 3 questions will help all the audience. There is a question from Mr. Ramalingam Ramakrishnan. Thank you so much for putting together this. I'm reading out his question. I come from the IT industry where learning is driven by the individual job requirements or growth. Also, our projects tend to have significant software. I see a noise in the background. Prithvi, can you just monitor this? There's a kind of somebody is traveling in a car, perhaps. Learning is driven by individual job requirements or growth. Our projects have to be significantly on software component also. And the 2 questions are, what is your experience? Question addressed to Dr. Subramania. In using Education 4.0 for mechanical skills or service sector skills. Question number 1. Question number 2. Apart from tools for better efficiency, transparency and speed, have you used tools to improve and measure learning effectiveness over 1 or 2 years? Over to Dr. Subramania.
Okay. So thank you, sir. Very nice question. So let me answer the first question. I'm sure that I'm also from a mechanical allied branch, industrial engineering. And as you talk from the IT industry side, more could be done on the software side. But on the mechanical allied branches side, if you look into, typically what happens is there is more of offline than online in this as of now. But I can also give a very good example. In our college, we have a center for advanced automotive mechatronics, which we have set up with actually Mercedes-Benz. And until that time, we also felt that all the car-related things we have to show only offline. But let me tell you, the kind of skill development which we are teaching in front of a car, as well as with interface software, I think it is phenomenal. So slowly, people even in the other traditional branches, people have realized that there should be a lot of online mode, but the online mode doing in these branches is not very easy, because it expects a lot of mechanical related softwares to be integrated, and also the skill of the person who is going to do it. For example, now what happened is our students are not in a position to come to the college at least for another 15 to 20 days. Now what they have done is our technical staff have done the experiments and they have taken the videos and they have sent it to the students to even understand the process. But of course, feeling is important. But as of now, under such situation, these things have been taken care. So your point is very valid, sir. I think the kind of work we are doing, I think is a long way to go, particularly for these things, because I can say that IT related branches, this is definitely exponentially it is growing. Whereas in the other branches, I think we would have started in good institutions. I think these things have been started, and I'll keep this as a note. I'm sure that I'm going to get back to you on all these things when we look into the mechanical, electrical, and related branches, where the hardware experimentation, the characterization is a very, very important thing. How do you make it as a part of the online as well as a offline? I think it's a challenge for me. I think that is question number 1. Question number 2 is.
Apart from the tools for better efficiency, transparency, and speed, have you used tools to improve and measure learning effectiveness over 1 or 2 years?
Yes. See, typically what I've done is I told you already the quick learn platform, whatever we have. So what we do is the study material and the videos and the ebooks, everything goes to the students. How well he is doing unit wise, how well he is studying that material, it is tracked at the back end, and how many students at any point of time have used these tools, and in line with that, how they perform the quizzes and the test. I think this analytics has been done by us, at least for the first 1 year. First year it is ready, second year it is work in progress, and this feedback is given back to the faculty members, through which we are trying to better our material and better our learning process also.
Great, sir. Now, very interesting question from a professor from Mangalore Engineering College, St. Joseph Engineering College, Dr. Sudhir. Online teaching has been taking place. However, online learning from students is not taking place as expected. What are your suggestions to improve online learning? Please.
Yeah, so typically, I think majority of the faculty would have faced these things in the last 1.5 months. That's why that question has come. But what happens? I don't say that everybody is like that. I think even in the offline or the online, whatever you take, when you are doing in the classroom, also such things will happen. But since it's the first time, what I feel is, at least in my college, I can say that 70 to 75% of the students are actively listening. And that's why I told you, slowly you have to go to the online learning. Proctored learning tools are coming nowadays, actually. Whether that fellow is listening to you correctly or not, is listening to something else. So these tools are there. That's why I told these kinds of tools have to be purchased. As of now, we are all using online free sources. So that's why this whatever questions he has asked can be definitely taken care, and online learning can be made much more interesting. It is possible, sir, to do it.
Maybe Dr. Subramania ji, can you when you redo your PowerPoint, you can have a separate slide on online learning challenges, and
Fine.
you can share it with Bangalore Chamber for circulation. Another interesting
Sure, sir,
question.
sure.
Another interesting question from my mentor, Mr. Rajendran. He says, is it same as a blended learning, hybrid learning? Is it another terminology of blended learning, or it is altogether different?
Actually, these two are synonymously used.
Okay.
Hybrid and blended learning are synonymously used words.
Fair enough. Then, of course, probably he didn't listen to the later part of the conversation. His questions are key aspect of social skills, interaction, body language, etc., will be challenged when we move to online, which is an obvious point. And I think everything cannot be, you can't have the cake and eat it. In the sense,
Correct.
the moment you have a corona, all of us are stuck at home, and we can't go to the bar or a pub for a party. So I think over a period, this will become a challenge, and we'll have to see how it will be addressed. Even around 20
But
years
actually,
back.
sir, as I've already told you, that complete online learning may not happen. So it's a long way to go. It will be definitely a combination. Whatever he is talking about on the human aspects of it, that has to be definitely tackled through the offline, and it will happen.
Which is why the hybrid and blended is coming. With social distancing and the virus, sooner or later the medicine and the vaccine will be ready. So if so many viruses have been tackled in the last 100 to 200 years of the westernization or the modernization, I'm sure this will be round the corner, and I will not be surprised after some time even online learning can come down also. Well, Lakshmi Narasimhan Ramachandran is asking a question. Sir, are you using the Bloom's taxonomy based subjects in the college? Well, I think all the colleges are using Bloom's taxonomy. You would like to share any comment on that, sir?
Actually, no, as of now, that has become almost mandatory for all the institutions.
Exactly. It's a cliche now.
Accreditation, tier 1 and tier 2 institutions, everybody has to map whatever they do, because there is a criteria 2 and 3 in the accreditation process, and we are supposed to submit all those things. And I think his question may be a little bit how effectively we are using it. Maybe that may be the question. So the effectiveness of using a Bloom taxonomy.
Yeah, you can address that. Yeah, you didn't ask so.
Yeah. Correct. So I'm sure all are using Bloom's taxonomy, but the understanding of the Bloom's taxonomy level with the questions and the level of learning, I think it's a work in progress, according to me. We may not be reached a maturity stage in that, and it's in the work in progress, maybe slowly, because let me tell you, even in developed countries, universities have taken 50 to 60 years to come to some level on understanding and making learning happen in a better way. So we have started somewhere not more than 10 years back. So I think we have some time we can take and start making it more effective.
If I may add to that, Doctor, it is similar to the ISO 9000. You can have a great vision for quality management system, but the way you implement and get the result of it is another issue. Well,
correct.
There is a question from Dr. Nandesh. Do you foresee a blended learning adoption will be 30 to 40% in the next 5 years in the Indian universities?
Why next?
Indian universities.
Yeah, why next? Sir, because AICT itself has already told 20% last year only. So as of now, whatever we are doing, 20% could be online mode. So I think post-COVID and because of all these experiences, definitely in another 2 years, 30% will be definitely there, sir. And 40% definitely in the next 5 years. It is going to happen.
On that, maybe the professors and the college administration must be thinking, a suggestion come from my mind right suddenly, that the morning college and evening college differences will vanish. The morning college, in on-premise learning, students can go back
Correct.
home and do the online learning part, and conversely, the evening college will do the on-premise in the evening, and then so the resources can be well utilized, both from the
Perfectly
faculty
right.
perspective
Yeah.
and the infrastructure, especially for the centers of excellence, like you have for Cisco
Correct.
Center of Excellence, BMW Center of
Correct.
Excellence, and so on and so forth. Utilizing the investment in the COEs are extremely important for the college health of the college.
Perfectly right, sir. You're perfectly right.
Thank you. Now I'll move on to another interesting question. And many of them have wished you best wishes. That's okay. Thank you. Mrs. Jasmine is asking, do you think any need of graduate attributes prescribed for hybrid learning? That means she's talking about a pre-qualification of for the students, perhaps.
No, actually, there is no separate need for this because graduate attributes has been already converted into program outcomes in our accreditation process. Online learning is one of the methods of doing the things. So we already have different methods of doing it. So I don't think a graduate attribute or a program outcome specifically needed for this because it is covered in 12 program outcomes already, which is given by NBA.
I don't understand the meaning of attribute, but from my interpretation, both graduate attributes and faculty attributes becomes extremely important because the skill of the trainer and the skill of the trainee or the pre-qualification, it results in the effectiveness of the course and the program because the input plus process is output. So I think there should be a very important methodology to reorient all our faculty as well as look at our admission process into the colleges. Well, I'm moving to a very important question by Mr. Dinakar. He's a very active member of Bangalore Chamber. He's also running a company called Do How, which is a very practical implementing workshop. He's asking, can the Do How workshop be interesting for looking at this hybrid learning process in the college? Maybe he can conduct a Do How workshop. There are a lot of free Do How workshops going on, and I will connect you. I'll connect Dr. Subramania to Dinakar on this. Then you can see how well it can be utilized.
No, we will be very happy to associate, sir.
And Do How is, as the name sounds, is all about implementation. Mrs. Purnima Gupta is asking, does it make sense to show the Coursera videos and then discuss some Harvard case studies in the online classroom session? I don't know what she means by that, but I'm just reading the question.
Okay, sir, I think I think I understood our questions correctly. So typically what happens is if you take any of these videos from Harvard or other things, no, it is all contextual based. And suddenly putting a video asking him to understand would be very difficult. So I think there is a need for us because based on the courses we are teaching, based on what is our context, if we can try to develop a videos that will be more understanding to the students, and it could be augmented with those videos, but that cannot be a main part of our course learning. It could be augmented. You can say you can look into these videos, but the videos needed for our kind of a courses, whatever we do, has to be done by us only. Otherwise, it will be very, very difficult to contextualize the things.
I think that triggers another thought, Doctor. You know, in our colleges, we had, particularly in the management education, there is always a tutorial. In the tutorial, classes are equally important to the main classes.
Correct.
You know, when I studied in IIM Calcutta, the tutorial classes were in the evenings, where the application of the concept taught in the daytime was done in problem solving and case study solving. So in the blended learning, you might like to look at more of application oriented inputs on the online one and more of the conceptual input in the classroom, or maybe even vice versa. It depends on the level of the, as you rightly mentioned, whether it is the bottom of the pyramid skills or the top of the pyramid skill which becomes important in that.
Correct, sir.
Perhaps the
Yeah.
case studies will require more interactive in the classroom rather than online. I don't
Perfect.
know.
Yes.
But the
Yes.
preparation of the case studies can be through
Can be done
online
online.
in the evenings.
Correct.
I think 24 hours is not enough for both students and faculty in the future. Coming to a very interesting question from Mr. Vishnu Jingade. Technology-driven education has its own setbacks. One of them is less job opportunities for faculty, as there would not be multitasking done by many faculties. I'm surprised at this question. You can respond, sir. He feels there will be
No,
unemployment.
actually, no, let me tell you, sir. Of course, this question is there among our circles always. But what I feel is, if faculty can, as I've already put in the concluding remarks, learn, unlearn, and relearn. Whoever can do that, I don't think there will be any unemployment problem, sir.
So, do you have faculty development program?
Yes, we have. Continuously, it goes on.
No, especially to train them on what you mentioned as pedagogy, because they're all trained for pedagogy. But now, how will
Correct,
you
sir,
reorient
correct.
them to pedagogy, as you mentioned?
We have already done. I told you, we have a digital a center of excellence in digital learning and education research. So
That is
under
from the
that we are
Johnson
doing
Lifts.
actually.
I wonder why Johnson Lifts have done it, but that we will discuss over a glass of beer.
Okay.
They must have some vision on that. Johnson Lifts. Maybe they are lifting the economy and lifting the society on that. Thank you very much,
No,
John.
sir, nothing. No, nothing like that, sir. Actually, they wanted to do a CSR activity for the college,
No,
and
but they are
by that
selected.
time I was. By that time, actually, I had a center of excellence I want to establish for this. Then I told, okay, we'll take this. That's the only thing. That's all.
Very good, very good. No, I think there is always a coincidence of circumstances.
Correct.
There are a lot of accolades for you from the various professors and industry. And Mr. Chandran is asking an interesting question. He's assistant professor in your own College of Management. Well, RV College Institute of Management.
Yeah.
We have adopted a digital industrial visit concept by using Microsoft in education and exploring new possibilities in management education through our innovation lab. Could you suggest? I don't understand his question.
I don't know what exactly he wants.
He's made a statement, not a question.
Correct.
We adopted a digital industrial visit concepts by using Microsoft in education, exploring new possibilities in management education through our innovation lab. Thank you, Mr. Chandran. I think very, very interesting input from Professor Nagaraju. Can the rural students be helped because resources are not available for them?
I think this is a discussion which is happening since 1 month. And as we have seen, even in our college, we found at least 5 to 6% of the people could not get connected during their classes, could not get connected for the tests and other things. But maybe other day, the Deputy Chief Minister of our state was telling that they are going to have a discussion and try to provide connectivity. It may take some more time. But for all such people, we have already told that they need not have to worry. When once they come back, we'll definitely help them offline. We'll help them. But as of now, the problem is there. Connectivity and accessibility problem is there, sir. And one more interesting thing actually, our Vice Chancellor of the VTU had suggested that let us say village student is somewhere near to a particular town or a city where the engineering college is there. He has told all the colleges that if such students are there, every college should help the other colleges. So in that way, whatever is near to him, he can definitely go and make use of the facilities in the other college also. I think that has been already circular has come from the university. In that way, the rural students also may not face that problem.
Sir, this gives me a very interesting thought. You must have already considered it. Like you are Bangalore centric more often. Are you considering opening decentralized centers in at least in Karnataka, where you can have a small one-man office in Belgaum, Dharwad, etc., where you can promote this decentralized approach of online education for higher education. And like NIIT did 40-30 years back, they spread the IT industry across the country, which is why, you know, the IT education exploded like anything, and lakhs of people are working in that industry. Higher education, Sashi Kiran is on the video. Thank you, madam. She's an expert in content development. Welcome, Sashi Kiran.
Okay.
Now she is talking from Delhi now. So that means there is so much of decentralized possibilities in exploring this particular subject. Okay, now I move on to one student question. Why there is a multiple accreditation agency for assessing the quality of education in the institution, and what is your suggestion on this? Multiple accreditation agency is a very general question, nothing to do with hybrid model.
No, actually, you should understand that there are only two important agencies, sir. One is NAC, other one is NBA. These are the accreditation agencies. NAC gives for the overall institution, NBA gives for a specific program.
Right.
That's it. So we have only two agencies as of now. There is no multiple agencies.
Very good.
One is for the institution, other is for a program.
And then you have got a control by the university also.
That will be there. That will be there. See, there are different activities, sir. One is affiliation, which is related to the admission, other related to the total infrastructure, other related to the guidelines which has to be followed. So I think they have got different roles to play. So that's how it happens, sir.
Understood. Now, yeah, I think Mr. Dinakar is confirming the rural access mobile ground stations could be a business opportunity. What mean probably is talking about, you know, a van, RV college van with some professors
Correct.
sitting inside is a mobile approach. It is already being done in the
Correct.
training industry. Training industry is doing it in a great way. We have Festo, SMC, Schneider, Siemens, all these people, Fanuc, they have mobile vans carrying the training kit, going nationally and training rural and other economies, industries.
Sir, we are already started looking into that, because as you know, we have a center of excellence in IoT, and we have a concept of IoT on wheels. We want to carry all these training kits and go to the different parts in Karnataka. Maybe in another 1 year we'll do that, sir.
Wow, wow. Sir, coming to a very interesting but a secular or a non-secular question from Mr. Vikram, that probably is the last question today. Is a Gurukul system of education can be brought back from some of the courses in the future as discussed in our Vedas?
Sir, actually, a Gurukul may have to be a little bit redefined, is one. And it happens, sir, actually, in fact, if a self-directed learning, if you are talking about, I think it's the same thing. Teacher and a student will get connected very frequently, and it will happen, but they may not call it as a Gurukula. That's it. The word may not be there. But the intention of a Gurukula system through self-directed learning, it is happening, sir, actually. And it is going to continue further.
On the lighter side, if the laptop can be taken under the tree or on a beach or on top of a mountain and or in the forests of the Karnataka, I think already the online teaching with Gurukula is happening on the lighter side. On that humorous note, I would like to close this session with itself. And everybody is thanked Dr. K.N. Subramania CG. You know, your vision is fantastic. You are a leader of the industry, education industry, and by taking up the position as a chairperson of the Industry Institute Committee of Bangalore Chamber, you are definitely looking at spreading this knowledge and awareness across the educational industry, and not just benefit only RV College of Engineering. And I know that for a fact. And I think many experiential learning sessions have been conducted where other colleges also participated in visiting RV College, and conversely, we also arranged where your professors have visited the other colleges, and as other professors are listening to this, will take a leaf out of this. And let me use this opportunity to thank Dr. Subramania to take this lead on this blended learning or hybrid learning concept. And perhaps you could set up a task force where slowly you bring in, as you mentioned, for design thinking, you have to start from the society or the industry before a prototype is made, is outside-in approach of innovation. You might also look at in your think tank to have some of the industry people, I could already see some names on this 100 people now left over in the conference, who can be in your advisory board, who can constantly look at what should be the real requirement by the employer. Because as Mr. Ramalingam Ramakrishnan mentioned, unless everything is related to a job, there is no point in imparting a skill. Likewise, knowledge have to have oriented towards a job or a research. A research pursues in the academic area or industrial research, and a job is where a value adding is done for a product or a service. So I'm sure college has got many experts from the industry oriented people, from multiple sectors can help you out. And of course, you have industry people from the centers of excellence, but it may be worthwhile even for the hybrid learning. You might consider that. I didn't see in your presentation, but I'm sure you're doing that. Thank you so much, Prithvi, Rupa. Thank you, Dr. Subramania and the entire RV College. And this is the 6th of the series of presentations and webinars we have done in the month of May, starting with my own presentation on the challenges of the pandemic, how to survive and recover through Industry 4.0. That is the first session we had in the beginning of May. And the last session is Education 4.0, how it can support and survive and revive the education system in the world at large. Because webinars and workshops of RV College can also help students from Africa, students from Malaysia, students from any of the developed nations, and overall also the developed as well as developing nations. And the online learning has no borders. There are no borders for online learning. On that note, thank you so much. I will take this opportunity.
Sir,
yes, sir. Please, your last words.
Thank you, thank you very much, sir. I first of all let me thank BCIC, the president, the vice presidents, and in particular Prithvi and Rupa for organizing this, and Chandramouli for taking the initiative. We'll try to continue and do a good work, sir, with definitely the support of all the industry experts who are all there. All the institutions will be needing the help of the industry experts. We all take care of that. And finally, I think the new norm is that change is very important. I think that's the final word I would like to give. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Before I close, there are some questions which came after we discussed it, and some of them are specific grievances of a student of the college. So obviously, I can't take that.
First year college.
Of your own college.
So ask him to send it to me.
Yeah, he's so shy. He has put his name as ABCD. So
I know. I saw that question.
Right, sir. So you are edit and you can handle. And I see you are carrying the mask now. So thank you, sir. Thank you for maintaining social distance. All the best for RV College. And thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you all once again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Frank. Thank you, Chandramouli, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. KNS. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
sir.
sir. Thank you.
BNS. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.